The Allies of Humanity by Marshall V. N. Summers. Sixth Briefing, Questions and Answers. We feel that it is important, given the information that we have provided thus far, to respond to questions that must surely arise regarding our reality and the significance of the messages that we have come to give. Question: given the lack of hard evidence, why should people believe what you are telling them about the intervention? Answer: first, there must be great evidence concerning the visitation to your world. We have been told that this is the case. Yet we have also been told by the unseen ones that people do not know how to understand the evidence, and that they give it their own meaning, a meaning that they prefer to give it, a meaning that provides comfort and reassurance for the most part. We are certain that there is adequate evidence to verify that the intervention is occurring in the world today if one takes the time to look and to investigate this matter. The fact that your governments or religious leaders do not reveal such things does not mean that such a great event is not occurring in your midst. Question: how can people know that you are real? Answer: regarding our reality, we cannot demonstrate our physical presence to you, and so you must discern the meaning and the import of our words. At this point, it is not merely a matter of belief. It requires a greater recognition, a knowledge, a resonance. The words we speak we believe are true, but that does not assure that they can be received as such. We cannot control the response to our message. There are people who require more evidence than can possibly be given. For others, such evidence will not be necessary, for they will feel an inner confirmation. In the meantime, perhaps we remain a controversy, and yet we hope and we trust that our words can be considered seriously, and that the evidence that does exist, which is substantial, can be gathered and understood by those who are willing to give this their effort and their focus in life. From our perspective, there is no greater problem, challenge, and opportunity to receive your attention. Therefore, you are at the beginning of a new understanding. This does require faith and self-reliance. Many will reject our words simply because they do not believe that we could possibly exist. Others perhaps will think that we are part of some manipulation that is being cast upon the world. We cannot control these responses. We can only reveal our message and our presence in your life, however removed that presence may be. It is not our presence here that is of paramount importance, but the message that we have come to reveal and the greater perspective and understanding that we can provide for you. Your education must begin somewhere. All education begins with the desire to know. We hope that through our discourses we can gain at least part of your confidence in order to begin to reveal what we are here to offer. Question: what do you have to say to those who view the intervention as a positive thing? Answer: we understand, first of all, the expectation that all forces from the heavens are related to your spiritual understanding, traditions, and fundamental beliefs. The idea that there is prosaic life in the universe is a challenge to these fundamental assumptions. From our perspective, and given the experience of our own cultures, we understand these expectations. In the distant past, we maintained them ourselves, and yet we had to relinquish them in facing the realities of greater community life and the meaning of visitation. You live in a great physical universe. It is full of life. This life represents countless manifestations and also represents the evolution of intelligence and spiritual awareness at every level. What this means is that what you will encounter in the greater community encompasses almost every possibility. However, you are isolated and do not yet travel in space. And even if you had the capability to reach another world, the universe is vast, and no one has gained the ability to go from one end of the galaxy to the other with any kind of speed. Therefore, the physical universe remains enormous and incomprehensible. No one has mastered its laws. No one has conquered its territories. No one can claim complete dominance or control. Life has a great humbling effect in this way. Even far beyond your borders, this is true. You should then come to expect that you will meet intelligence representing forces for good, forces for ignorance, and those who are more neutral regarding you. However, in the realities of greater community travel and exploration, emerging races such as your own will, almost without exception, encounter resource explorers, collectives, and those seeking advantage for themselves as their first contact with greater community life. Regarding the positive interpretation of visitation, part of this is human expectation and the natural desire to welcome a good outcome and to seek help from the greater community for the problems that humanity has not been able to resolve on its own. It is normal to expect such things, particularly when you're considering that your visitors have greater capabilities than do you. However, a large part of the problem in interpreting the Great Visitation has to do with the will and the agenda of the visitors themselves. For they are encouraging people everywhere to view their presence here as wholly beneficial to humanity and to its needs. Question: if the visitation is so well underway, why didn't you come sooner? Answer: at an earlier time, many years ago, several groups of your allies came to your world to visit in an attempt to give a message of hope to prepare humanity. But alas, their messages could not be understood and were misused by those few who could receive them. In the wake of their coming, the visitors from the collectives have amassed and gathered here. It has been known to us that this would happen, for your world is far too valuable to be overlooked, and, as we have said, it does not exist in a remote and distant part of the universe. Your world has been observed for a long time by those who would seek to use it for their own benefit. Question: why can't our allies stop the intervention? Answer: we are only here to observe and to advise. The great decisions facing humanity are in your hands. No one else can make these decisions for you. Even your great friends far beyond your world would not intervene, for if they did so, it would cause warfare, and your world would become a battleground between opposing forces. And should your friends be victorious, you would become wholly reliant upon them, unable to fend for yourself or to maintain your own security in the universe. We know of no benevolent race that would seek to bear this burden, and in truth, it would not serve you either. For you would become a client state to another power and would have to be governed from afar. This is not beneficial for you in any way, and it is for this reason that this is not occurring. Yet the visitors will cast themselves as saviors and rescuers of humanity. They will utilize your naivete. They will capitalize on your expectations and they will seek to wholly benefit from your trust. Therefore, it is our sincere desire that our words can serve as an antidote to their presence and to their manipulation and abuse. For your rights are being violated. Your territory is being infiltrated. Your governments are being persuaded. And your religious ideologies and impulses are being redirected. There must be a voice of truth regarding this, and we can only trust that you can receive this voice of truth. We can only hope that the persuasion has not gone too far. Question: what are realistic goals for us to set? And what is the bottom line with regard to saving humanity from losing its self-determination? Answer: the first step is awareness. Many people must become aware that the earth is being visited and that foreign powers are here operating in a clandestine manner, seeking to hide their agenda and endeavors from human understanding. It must be very clear that their presence here is a great challenge to human freedom and self-determination. The agenda that they are furthering and the pacification program that they are sponsoring must be countered with sobriety and wisdom regarding their presence. This counteraction must occur. There are many people in the world today who are able to understand this. Therefore, the first step is awareness. The next step is education. It is necessary for many people in different cultures and in different nations to learn about life in the greater community and to begin to comprehend what you will be dealing with and are dealing with even at this moment. Therefore, realistic goals are awareness and education. This in itself would obstruct the visitor's agenda in the world. They are operating now with very little resistance. They are encountering few obstacles. All those who seek to view them as allies of humanity must learn that this is not the case. Perhaps our words will not be enough, but they are a beginning. Question: where can we find this education? Answer: the education can be found in the greater community way of knowledge, which is being presented in the world at this time. Though it presents a new understanding about life and spirituality in the universe, it is connected to all of the genuine spiritual paths that already exist within your world. Spiritual paths that value human freedom and the meaning of true spirituality, and that value cooperation, peace, and harmony within the human family. Therefore, the teaching in the way of knowledge calls forth all the great truths that already exist in your world and gives them a greater context and arena of expression. In this way, the greater community way of knowledge does not replace the world's religions, but provides a larger context within which they can be truly meaningful and relevant to your times. Question: how do we convey your message to others? Answer: the truth lives within each person at this moment. If you can speak to the truth in a person, it will become stronger and begin to resonate. Our great hope, the hope of the unseen ones, the spiritual forces who serve your world, and the hope of those who value human freedom and wish to see your emergence into the greater community successfully fulfilled, rely upon this truth that lives within each person. We cannot force this awareness upon you. We can only reveal it to you and trust in the greatness of knowledge that the Creator has given you that can enable you and others to respond. Question: where do humanity's strengths lie in opposing the intervention? Answer: first, we understand from observing your world and from what the unseen ones have told us regarding things that we cannot see, that though there are great problems within the world, there is sufficient human freedom to give you a foundation for opposing the intervention. This is in contrast to many other worlds where individual freedom was never established to begin with. As these worlds encounter alien forces in their midst and the reality of greater community life, the possibility for them to establish freedom and independence is very limited. Therefore, you have a great strength in that human freedom is known in your world and is practiced by many, though perhaps not all. You know you have something to lose. You value what you have already to whatever extent it has been established. You do not want to be ruled by foreign powers. You do not even want to be ruled harshly by human authorities. Therefore, this is a beginning. Next, because your world has rich spiritual traditions that have fostered knowledge in the individual and fostered human cooperation and understanding, the reality of knowledge has already been established. Again, in other worlds where knowledge has never been established, the possibility for establishing it at the turning point of emerging into the greater community shows little hope for success. Knowledge is strong enough in enough people here that they may be able to learn of the reality of life in the greater community and to comprehend what is occurring in their midst at this time. It is for this reason that we are hopeful, for we trust in human wisdom. We trust that people can rise above selfishness, self-preoccupation, and self-protection to view life in a greater way and to feel a greater responsibility in service to their own kind. Perhaps our faith is unfounded, but we are trusting that the unseen ones have counseled us wisely regarding this. As a result, we have placed ourselves at risk by being in the proximity of your world and witnessing events beyond your borders that have direct bearing on your future and destiny. Humanity has great promise. You have a growing awareness of problems in the world, the lack of cooperation among nations, the degradation of your natural environment, your diminishing resources, and so forth. If these problems were unknown to your people, if these realities have been kept hidden from your people, to the extent that people had no idea of the existence of these things, then we would not be as hopeful. However, the reality remains that humanity has the potential and the promise to counteract any intervention into the world. Question: is this intervention going to become a military invasion? Answer: as we have said, your world is too valuable to incite a military invasion. No one who is visiting your world wants to destroy its infrastructure or its natural resources. That is why the visitors do not seek to destroy humanity, but instead to engage humanity in service to their collectives. It is not military invasion that threatens you. It is the power of inducement and persuasion. This will be built upon your own weakness, upon your own selfishness, upon your ignorance of life in the greater community, and upon your blind optimism regarding your future and the meaning of life beyond your borders. To counteract this, we provide education, and we speak of the means of preparation that are being sent into the world at this time. If you did not already know human freedom, if you were not already aware of the problems endemic to your world, then we could not entrust such a preparation to you, and we would not have confidence that our words would resonate with the truth of what you know. Question: can you influence people as powerfully as the visitors, but for the good? Answer: our intention is not to influence individuals. Our intention is only to present the problem and the reality into which you are emerging. The unseen ones are providing the actual means of preparation, for that comes from God. In this, the unseen ones influence individuals for the good, but there are restraints. And as we have said, it is your self-determination that must be strengthened. It is your power that must be increased. It is your cooperation amongst the human family that must be supported. There are limits as to how much help we can provide. Our group is small. We are not walking amongst you. Therefore, the great understanding of your new reality must be shared from person to person. It cannot be forced upon you from a foreign power, even if it were for your own good. We would not, then, be supporting your freedom and self-determination if we sponsored such a program of persuasion. Here you cannot be like children. You must become mature and responsible. It is your freedom that is at stake. It is your world that is at stake. It is your cooperation with each other that is needed. You now have a great cause to unite your race, for none of you will benefit without the other. No nation will benefit if any other nation falls under alien control. Human freedom must be complete. The cooperation must occur around your world, for everyone is in the same situation now. The visitors do not favor one group over another, one race over another, one nation over another. They only seek the avenue of least resistance to establish their presence and their domination of your world. Question: how extensive is their infiltration of humanity? Answer: the visitors have a significant presence within the most advanced nations in your world, particularly the nations of Europe, Russia, Japan, and America. These are viewed as the strongest nations, having the greatest power and influence. It is there that the visitors will concentrate. However, they are taking people from all over the world, and they are furthering their pacification program with all those that they capture, if those individuals can be responsive to their influence. Therefore, the visitors' presence is worldwide, but they are concentrating on those whom they hope will become their allies. These are the nations and governments and religious leaders who hold the greatest power and sway over human thought and conviction. Question: how much time do we have? Answer: how much time do you have? You have some time. How much we cannot tell. But we come with an urgent message. This is not a problem that can simply be avoided or denied. From our perspective, it is the most important challenge facing humanity. It is of the greatest concern, the first priority. You are late in your preparation. This was caused by many factors beyond our control. But there is time if you can respond. The outcome is uncertain, and yet there is still hope for your success. Question: how can we focus on this intervention, given the immensity of other global problems which are occurring right now? Answer. First of all, we feel that there are no other problems in the world that are as important as this. From our perspective, whatever you can resolve on your own will have little meaning in the future if your freedom is lost. What could you hope to gain? What could you hope to achieve or secure if you were not free in the greater community? All of your accomplishments would be given to your new governors. All of your wealth would be bestowed upon them. And though your visitors are not cruel, they are completely committed to their agenda. You are valued only insofar as you can be useful to their cause. It is for this reason that we do not feel that there are any other problems facing humanity as important as this. Question: who is likely to respond to this situation? Answer: regarding who can respond, there are many people in the world today who have an inherent knowledge of the greater community and who are sensitive to it. There are many others who have been taken by the visitors already, but who have not yielded to them or to their persuasion. And there are many others who are concerned about the future of humanity and who are alerted to the dangers that humanity faces, even with your own world. People in all or any of these three categories may be amongst the first to respond to the greater community reality and to the preparation for the greater community. They may come from any walk of life, from any nation, from any religious background, or from any economic group. They are literally all over the world. It is upon them and upon their response that the great spiritual powers that protect and oversee human welfare are depending. Question: you mentioned that individuals are being taken all over the world. How can people protect themselves or others from being abducted? Answer: the more you become strong with knowledge and aware of the visitor's presence, the less you become a desirable subject for their study and manipulation. The more you use your encounters with them to gain insight into them, the more of a hazard you become. As we have said, they seek the path of least resistance. They want individuals who are compliant and yielding. They want those who cause them few problems and little concern. Yet as you become strong with knowledge, you will be beyond their control, because now they cannot capture your mind or your heart. And with time, you will have the power of perception to see into their minds, which they do not wish. You then become a danger to them, a challenge to them, and they will avoid you if they can. The visitors do not seek to be revealed. They do not wish for conflict. They are overly confident that they can achieve their goals without serious resistance from the human family. But once such resistance is mounted, once the power of knowledge awakens in the individual, then the visitors are facing a much more formidable obstacle. Their intervention here becomes thwarted and more difficult to achieve, and their persuasion of those in power becomes more difficult to accomplish. Therefore, it is the individual's response and commitment to the truth that are essential here. Become aware of the visitor's presence. Do not yield to the persuasion that their presence here is of a spiritual nature or that it holds great benefit or salvation for humanity. Resist the persuasion. Regain your own inner authority, the great gift that the Creator has given to you. Become a force to be reckoned with regarding any who would trespass against or deny your fundamental rights. This is spiritual power being expressed. It is the will of the Creator that humanity should emerge into the greater community, united within itself and free from foreign intervention and domination. It is the Creator's will that you should prepare for a future that will be unlike your past. We are here in service to the Creator, and thus our presence and our words serve this purpose. Question: if the visitors encounter resistance in humanity or in certain individuals, will they come in greater numbers or will they leave? Answer: their numbers are not great. Should they encounter considerable resistance, they would have to fall back and make new plans. They are wholly confident that their mission can be fulfilled without serious obstacles. Yet, should serious obstacles arise, then their intervention and persuasion would be thwarted, and they would have to find other ways of gaining contact with humanity. We trust that the human family can generate enough resistance and enough consensus in order to offset these influences. It is upon this that we are basing our hope and efforts. Question: what are the most important questions that we must ask of ourselves and others with respect to this problem of alien infiltration? Answer: perhaps the most critical questions to ask yourself are we humans alone within the universe or in our own world? Are we being visited at this time? Is this visitation beneficial to us? Do we need to prepare? These are very fundamental questions, but they must be asked. There are many questions, however, that cannot be answered, for you do not know enough about life in the greater community, and you are not yet confident that you have the ability to counteract these influences. There are many things lacking in human education, which is primarily focused upon the past. Humanity is emerging from a long state of relative isolation. Its education, its values, and its institutions were all established within this state of isolation. Yet your isolation now is over, forever. It was always known that this would happen. It was inevitable that this would be the case. Therefore, your education and your values are entering into a new context to which they must adapt. And the adaptation must happen quickly because of the nature of the intervention in the world today. There will be many questions that you cannot answer. You will have to live with them. Your education about the greater community is only at the very beginning. You must approach it with great sobriety and care. You must counteract your own tendencies to try and make the situation pleasant or reassuring. You must develop an objectivity about life, and you must look beyond your personal sphere of interests in order to put yourself in a position to respond to the greater forces and events that are shaping your world and your future. Question: what if enough people cannot respond? Answer: we are confident that enough people can respond and begin their great education about life in the greater community in order to give promise and hope to the human family. If this cannot be achieved, then those who value their freedom and who have this education will have to retreat. They will have to keep knowledge alive in the world as the world falls under complete control. This is a very grave alternative, and yet it has occurred in other worlds. The journey back to freedom from such a position is quite difficult. We hope that this will not be your fate, and that is why we are here giving you this information. As we have said, there are enough people in the world who can respond to offset the intentions of the visitors and to thwart their influence on human affairs and human values. Question: You speak of other worlds emerging into the greater community. Can you speak of successes and failures which might have bearing on our situation? Answer: there have been successes, or we would not be here. In my case, as the speaker for our group, our world had already been greatly infiltrated before we realized the situation at hand. Our education was prompted by the arrival of a group such as ourselves, providing insight and information about our situation. We had alien resource traders in our world interacting with our government. Those who were in power at that time were persuaded that trade and commerce would be beneficial to us, for we were beginning to experience resource depletion. Though our race was united, unlike your own, we began to be wholly dependent upon the new technology and opportunities that were being presented to us. And yet, as this occurred, there was a shift in the center of power. We were becoming the clients. The visitors were becoming the providers. As time went on, terms and restrictions were placed upon us, subtly at first. Our religious focus and beliefs were also influenced by the visitors, who showed interest in our spiritual values, but who wished to give us a new understanding, an understanding based upon the collective, based upon the cooperation of minds thinking alike in unison with each other. This was presented to our race as an expression of spirituality and achievement. Some were persuaded, and yet because we were well advised from our allies from beyond our world, allies such as ourselves, we began to mount a resistance movement, and over time were able to force the visitors to leave our world. Since that time, we have learned a great deal about the greater community. The trade that we maintain is very selective, with only a few other nations. We have been able to avoid the collectives, and that has preserved our freedom. And yet our success was difficult to achieve, for there were many of us who had to die in the face of this conflict. Ours is a story of success, but not without cost. There are others in our group who have experienced similar difficulties in their interaction with intervening powers in the greater community. And yet, because we eventually learned to travel beyond our borders, we gained alliance with one another. We were able to learn what spirituality means in the greater community. And the unseen ones, who serve our world as well, helped us in this regard to make the great transition from isolation to greater community awareness. Yet there have been many failures that we are aware of. Cultures where the indigenous peoples had not established personal freedom, or had not tasted the fruits of cooperation, even though they were advancing technologically, did not have a foundation to establish their own independence in the universe. Their ability to resist the collectives was very limited. Induced by promises of greater power, greater technology, and greater wealth, and induced by the seeming benefits of trade in the greater community, their center of power left their world. In the end, they became wholly dependent upon those who supplied them and who gained control of their resources and their infrastructures. Surely you can imagine how this could be the case. Even within your own world, according to your history, you have seen smaller nations fall under the domination of greater ones. You can see this even today. Therefore, these ideas are not wholly foreign to you. In the greater community, as in your world, the strong will dominate the weak if they can. This is a reality of life everywhere. And it is for this reason that we are encouraging your awareness and your preparation in order that you may become strong and your self-determination may grow. It may be a grave disappointment to many to understand and to learn that freedom is rare in the universe. As nations become stronger and more technological, they require greater and greater uniformity and compliance amongst their peoples. As they bridge out into the greater community and become involved in greater community affairs, the tolerance for individual expression diminishes to the point where large nations that have wealth and power are governed with a strictness and an exacting attitude that you would find abhorrent. Here you must learn that technological advancement and spiritual advancement are not the same, a lesson that humanity has yet to learn, and which you must learn if you are to exercise your natural wisdom in these matters. Your world is greatly valued. It is rich biologically. You are sitting on a prize that you must protect if you are to be its stewards and its beneficiaries. Consider the peoples in your world who have lost their freedom because they lived in a place considered valuable by others. It is now the whole human family that is so imperiled. Question: because the visitors are so skilled in projecting thoughts and influencing people's mental environment, how do we ensure ourselves that what we are seeing is real? Answer: the only basis for wise perception is the cultivation of knowledge. If you believe only what you see, then you will believe only what is shown to you. There are many, we are told, that have this perspective. Yet we have learned that the wise everywhere must gain a greater vision and a greater discernment. It is true that your visitors can project images of your saints and of your religious figures. Though this is not practiced often, it certainly can be used in order to evoke commitment and dedication amongst those who are already given to such beliefs. Here your spirituality becomes an area of vulnerability where wisdom must be used. Yet the Creator has given you knowledge as a foundation for true discernment. You can know what you are seeing if you ask yourself if it is real. Yet to do this, you must have this foundation, and that is why the teaching in the way of knowledge is so fundamental to learning greater community spirituality. Without this, people will believe what they want to believe, and they will rely upon what they see and what they are shown. And their potential for freedom will have been lost already, for it was never allowed to flourish in the first place. Question: you speak about keeping knowledge alive. How many will it take to keep knowledge alive in the world? Answer: we cannot give you a number, but it must be strong enough to generate a voice within your own cultures. If this message can only be received by a few, they will not have this voice or this strength. Here they must share their wisdom. It cannot be purely for their own edification. Many more must learn of this message, many more than can receive it today. Question: is there a danger in presenting this message? Answer: there is always a danger in presenting the truth, not only in your world, but elsewhere. People gain advantage from the circumstances as they currently exist. The visitors will offer advantage to those in power who can receive them and who are not strong in knowledge. People become accustomed to these advantages and build their lives upon them. This makes them resistant or even hostile to the presentation of truth, which calls for their responsibility and service to others, and which may threaten the basis of their wealth and achievements. This is why we are hidden and do not walk in your world. Certainly, the visitors would destroy us if they could find us. But humanity may seek to destroy us as well because of what we represent, because of the challenge and the new reality that we demonstrate. Not everyone is ready to receive the truth, even though it is greatly needed. Question: can individuals who are strong with knowledge influence the visitors? Answer: the chance of success here is very limited. You are dealing with a collective of beings who have been bred to be compliant, whose whole life and experience have been encompassed and engendered by a collective mentality. They do not think for themselves. For this reason, we do not feel that you can influence them. There are few amongst the human family who have the strength to do this, and even here the possibility for success would be very limited. So the answer must be no. For all practical purposes, you cannot win them over. Question: how are collectives different from a united humanity? Answer: collectives are made up of different races and of those who are bred to serve those races. Many of the beings that are being encountered in the world are bred by collectives to be servants. Their genetic heritage has long been lost to them. They are bred to serve, as you breed animals to serve you. The human cooperation that we are promoting is a cooperation that preserves the self-determination of individuals and provides a position of strength from which humanity can interact, not only with the collectives, but with others who will visit your shores in the future. A collective is based upon one belief, one set of principles, and one authority. Its emphasis is complete allegiance to an idea or an ideal. Not only is this engendered in the education of your visitors, but in their genetic code as well. That is why they behave in the ways that they do. This is both their strength and their weakness. They have great strength in the mental environment because their minds are united. But they are weak because they cannot think for themselves. They cannot deal with complexities or adversity very successfully. A man or woman of knowledge would be incomprehensible to them. Humanity must unite to preserve its freedom. But this is a very different establishment from the creation of a collective. We call them collectives because there are collectives of different races and nationalities. Collectives are not one race. Though there are many races in the greater community that are ruled by a dominant authority, a collective is an organization that spans beyond the allegiance of one race to its own world. Collectives can have great power. Yet because there are many collectives, they tend to compete with one another, which prevents any one of them from becoming dominant. Also, various nations in the greater community have long-standing disputes with one another, which are difficult to bridge. Perhaps they have competed for a long time for the same resources. Perhaps they compete with one another to sell the resources that they have. Yet a collective is a different matter. As we are saying here, it is not based upon one race and one world. They are the result of conquest and domination. That is why your visitors are comprised of different races of beings at different levels of authority and command. Question: in other worlds that have successfully unified, did they maintain their individual freedom of thought? Answer: to varying degrees. Some to a very high degree, others less so, depending upon their history, their psychological makeup, and the needs of their own survival. Your life in the world has been relatively easy compared to where other races have developed. Most places where intelligent life exists have been colonized, for there are not many terrestrial planets such as your own that provide such a wealth of biological resources. Their freedom, in large part, depended upon the wealth of their environments. But they have all been successful in thwarting alien infiltration and have established their own lines of trade, commerce, and communication based upon their own self-determination. This is a rare accomplishment and must be earned and protected. Question: what will it take to achieve human unity? Answer: humanity is very vulnerable in the greater community. This vulnerability, in time, can foster a fundamental cooperation amongst the human family, for you must join and unite in order to survive and to advance. This is part of having a greater community awareness. If this is based upon the principles of human contribution, freedom, and self-expression, then your self-sufficiency can become very strong and very rich. But there must be greater cooperation in the world. People cannot live for themselves alone or put their own personal goals above and beyond the needs of everyone else. Some may view this as a loss of freedom. We see it as a guarantee for your future freedom. For given the current attitudes prevalent in the world today, your future freedom would be very difficult to secure or maintain. Take heed. Those who are driven by their own selfishness are the perfect candidates for foreign influence and manipulation. If they are in positions of power, they will give over their nation's wealth, their nation's freedom, and their nation's resources in order to gain advantage for themselves. Therefore, greater cooperation is required. Surely you can see this. Surely this is apparent even within your own world. But this is very different from the life of the collective, where races have been dominated and controlled, where those who are compliant are brought into the collectives and those who are not are alienated or destroyed. Surely such an establishment, though it may have considerable influence, cannot be beneficial for its members. And yet this is the path that many in the greater community have taken. We do not wish to see humanity fall into such an organization. That would be a great tragedy and a loss. Question: how is the human perspective different from yours? Answer: one of the differences is that we have developed a greater community perspective, which is a less self-centered way of looking at the world. It is a point of view that gives great clarity and can provide great certainty regarding the smaller problems that you face in your daily affairs. If you can solve a great problem, you can solve lesser ones. You have a great problem. Every human being in the world faces this great problem. It can unite you and enable you to overcome your long-standing differences and conflicts. It is that great and that powerful. This is why we say there is a possibility for redemption within the very circumstances that threaten your well-being and your future. We know that the power of knowledge within the individual can restore that individual and all of their relationships to a higher degree of accomplishment, recognition, and ability. You must discover this for yourself. Our lives are very different. One of the differences is that our lives are given to service, a service that we have chosen. We have the freedom to choose, and thus our choice is real and meaningful and is based upon our own understanding. Amongst our group are representatives from several different worlds. We have come together in service to humanity. We represent a greater alliance that is more spiritual in nature. Question. This message is coming through one man. Why aren't you contacting everybody if this is so important? Answer. It is merely a matter of efficiency. We do not control who is selected to receive us. That is a matter for the unseen ones, those whom you could rightly call angels. We think of them in this way. They have selected this person, a person who has no position in the world, who is not recognized in the world, an individual who has been chosen because of his qualities and because of his heritage in the greater community. We are glad to have one through whom we can speak. If we spoke through more, they perhaps would disagree with one another, and the message would become confused and lost. We understand from our own studenthood that the transmission of spiritual wisdom is generally given through one, with the support of others. This individual must bear the weight and the burden and the risk of being so chosen. We respect him for doing this, and we understand what a burden it can be. This will be misconstrued perhaps, and that is why the wise must remain hidden. We must remain hidden. He must remain hidden. In this way the message can be given, and the messenger can be preserved. For there will be hostility towards this message. The visitors will oppose it, and are opposing it already. Their opposition can be significant, but will primarily be aimed at the messenger himself. It is for this reason that the messenger must be protected. We know that the answers to these questions will generate more questions, and many of these cannot be answered, perhaps even for a long time. The wise anywhere must live with questions that they cannot yet answer. It is through their patience and their perseverance that real answers emerge, and that they are able to experience them and embody them. Note: these questions were sent to the New Knowledge Library by many of the first readers of the Allies material. Final words. Humanity is at a new beginning. It is faced with a grave situation. The need for a new education and understanding is paramount. We are here to serve this need at the request of the unseen ones. They are relying upon us to share our wisdom, for we live in the physical universe, as do you. We are not angelic beings. We are not perfect. We have not achieved great heights of spiritual awareness and accomplishment. And therefore our message to you about the greater community, we trust, will be more relevant and more easily received. The unseen ones know far more than we about life in the universe, and about the levels of advancement and accomplishment that are available and that are practiced in many places. Yet they have asked us to speak regarding the reality of physical life because we are fully engaged there. And we have learned through our own trials and errors the importance and the meaning of what we are sharing with you. Thus, we come as the allies of humanity, for such we are. Be thankful that you have allies that can help you, and that can educate you, and that can support your strength, your freedom, and your accomplishment. For without this assistance, this prospect of your surviving the kind of alien infiltration that you are experiencing now would be very limited. Yes, there would be a few individuals who would come to realize the situation as it actually exists, but their numbers would not be great enough, and their voices would go unheard. In this, we can only ask for your trust. We hope that through the wisdom of our words and through the opportunities you have to learn their meaning and relevance, that we can gain this trust over time, for you have allies in the greater community. You have great friends beyond this world who have suffered the challenges that you are facing now and have achieved success. Because we were assisted, we must now assist others. That is our sacred covenant. It is to this that we are firmly committed.